start the way that we would traditionally start. Good evening and welcome to episode 37 of the Racing Line podcast. A little bit of a filibuster weekend, some would say, because there was no Formula One. We had MotoGP. We're going to talk a little bit about INDYCAR tonight as well. And there was a few other oddities that were taking place around the motorsport scene internationally as well, which we'll maybe just delve into a little bit just as well tonight. But we'll start in Catalunya, the Circuit de Barcelona, for the MotoGP. What is that, round 7 of MotoGP, where we saw Quartararo take a pretty convincing win. Has to be said, there was a lot of trip-ups from potential championship contenders, and even Aleix Espargaro, who looked like he had a comfortable second place up till the end of the penultimate lap. Thought the race finished a lap before it did, and kind of snookered himself a little bit. So Joe, as the new resident MotoGP correspondent since Michael's departure, what did you make of the race?
I thought it wasn't a bad race, but I thought it was quite. It was not the best in terms of races to watch. It was a bit boring, not much passing really. I mean, Quartararo, what can you say? Once he got in front, that was the big sort of if he gets in front, will he start? He will stay in front, and our first corner, it was done. I think the bigger, I mean, here's the thing: we don't give, like when we talk about it, we don't give this guy his due. I mean, we sort of take it for granted that he is at the moment on a level that no one's operating at, and even if they are operating at it, no one operates at that level as consistently as him. You know what I mean? I mean, Pecco, very unfortunate. Probably one of the stupidest incidents I've seen in a long time in MotoGP. Like really poor form by Nakagami, and I think this is him signing off on his, like, could be very much part of the decision of him not being on the grid next year.
Mate, I barely watch the races. I only watch every second or third race. Every time I watch, this bloke's falling off his bike.
Yeah, but this time it was worse because he's taken out Pecco, which is, I would say the championship is done now.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of Pecco.
Well, we said we literally said at the end of last week's episode that unless
Pecco wins every race.
Yeah, like he needed to have no more mistakes, and there was another mistake. So
I think the sad thing is I think like the grid knows it as well. Like even Aleix was there to sort of mount a challenge, and he's had a unfortunate last lap sort of befuddlement, and he's celebrated one lap too early, which has lost valuable points as well.
How does that happen, by the way?
I
know they don't have team radio, but they've got the pit wall. Like,
it's not even that. There's a checkered flag, bro.
It's just the befuddlery.
I was thinking about it. I was like, dude, no matter what, there's a checkered flag at the end of every race. Like, come on. But you know what? He was in a very intense battle. So, these things can happen. They probably shouldn't happen, but it is what it is.
The worst thing was also for bloody Nakagami was that was his best showing.
Yeah,
up to that point.
Qualifying was awesome.
Like he had a good race last week with Marquez being out as well, kind of thinking, maybe he's gonna kind of make a claim for keeping his seat, and then
the worst thing is that his teammate qualifies last, and then if Nakagami had finished in a decent position, then Alex Marquez finishing 10th probably doesn't look as good as it does. Yeah. But Alex Marquez racing from last on the grid to 10th was probably one of the best race throughs you've seen in a long time, really, from the back. And it's probably the best showing that young Marquez has had in a long time. I mean, there's quite a few interesting talking points from this race, even though I called it boring. You've got Remy Gardner finishing 11th, probably best result of his career, his short career. You've got Jack Miller finishing practically third last.
What happened there? I know his quali wasn't good, but surely he could have made ground in the race.
I reckon his mind might be a bit elsewhere, just thinking about
his mind could be elsewhere because it seems like his signed a deal to race for Red Bull KTM next year. Seems like it's done. But also he seemed pretty good in practice 1, 2, and 3, and then in practice 4 his pace was nowhere. Like it was worse than even his first 3 practices, and then that got carried through into qualifying.
I saw somewhere that he was having trouble firing the tires up.
Yeah, well, he has a different turning style. I think, like, he's sort of in a category a little bit like Pole, that they the way they ride the bike, it has, like, the temperatures have to be right, otherwise they can't do anything. And you saw that with Pole as well. He had a decent qualifying, and he ended up worse than Jack.
I feel like the air has kind of gone out of Pole's balloon, to be honest with you, this year.
Well, he's gone as well. The word on the street is he's racing for Tech 3 next year. So
that's a great move for them.
Huh?
It's a great move for KTM to get him back.
Yeah, but I'm like, if you look at, like, we were talking about Jack, he was the worst Ducati that finished the race, and he would have been the worst Ducati even if the other ones had finished the race, because three of them ended up in the gravel trap.
Well, the Pramex still flogged him.
Dude, the Pramex looked really good this week. Like, that was the weird thing. And then you look at the table now. There's a time after round 4 that Jack was the top Ducati still. Now Zarco's closed up his 4th in the championship. You know, like, Zarco's putting in some consistent and really good performances. Martin's had a good performance to probably cover up his couple of falls recently. Pecco's, looking dangerous as always. So unfortunately, Jack is the one who looks the most out of sorts at the moment. And I mean, is it because of the whole contract thing? Who knows? I mean, you can never say that it's easy, the job that they're doing. I mean, it's definitely not. And then when you see crashes like the first corner crash, you realize sort of the actual danger in the sport that we're watching. But definitely not the weekend that Jack would have wanted to have, and not for Australian fans either.
He started the season off so well though, and he's just fallen off.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting game. Like, there could be, like, the thing is, I didn't really get any interviews or anything after the event from Jack to even know what he didn't give any sort of reason for it, other than, who knows, tire wear. He could have, I didn't even see at the start of the race what tires he was running, and I was trying to work it out. And then in the last 3 laps, he got passed by Binder and Remy and Fernandez, I think it was.
It was just,
and it was a bad weekend. Like, really, it was a disappointing weekend for him. And now we're going to go Saxon Rings and see what he can do. What did you think, Anth, about the whole Miller situation this weekend?
Kind of just thought maybe he was just a bit off it with his contract situation being probably at the forefront of his mind, but it still really isn't an excuse. And who knows, maybe he's kind of at the point where he might be at the point now where he knows he's going to KTM, and he's not going to put in the 10 tenths that he needs anymore, because he realizes that his next 2 years are already lined up. So the worst thing for him now would be to actually get injured for no apparent reason.
Funny thing about Ducati as a team as well is that when they know their riders are leaving, they don't really, give them any preferential treatment after that. Like, they're probably the worst team for that kind of.
But the other thing that
sportsmanship.
The other thing that probably you didn't mention, and I think it's prudent, is the fact that Jack has never been someone who can conserve a tire.
Yeah.
And he struggles with that on the best of days. And we went to a track this week that's probably the heaviest on tire degradation. Yeah. So who knows, he might have been trying to save tire, and that's why he wasn't as fast as he needed to be. And then if he wasn't able to manage it at the rate that he needed to, then it just would have been a double whammy for him. So I can see that being an issue as well. But the good thing, the silver lining for him is at least he's going to be on the grid moving forward. He's going to be at a bike that realistically probably only needs it needs a few high quality riders to kind of increase its stature.
And you know
Because we
what? They're
know that,
getting him.
yeah, and we know that there's talent in that bike. They're getting Espargaro back, and if he's teammates with Miller, we know that there's at least someone in that stable who definitely knows how to set up that bike. You know, he did a lot of the groundwork to developing the KTM. So all of that's, you know, very good for him. And I don't think there's much more to say on that
About this
really.
weekend.
Not really in his regard. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of his season done, realistically.
I don't think so. I think there will definitely be races, the tracks that we're going to come to that he'll put in. Dude, you can. That was probably the worst performance I've seen from him in 3 years, other than him crashing.
Yeah, but
I would have rather see him run up front and crash.
Bastianini's going on the factory bike next year, right?
That's still up in the air.
It would be
if he keeps
fairly safe bet.
binning it. He's binned it 2 races in a row now. If he bins it till the end of the season, and Martin puts in races like he did yesterday, this is the dilemma that Ducati have now. They've got these young guys, and none of them have really shown consistency. And there actually is word that Zarco is still in the mix for that seat as well.
No way.
And I'm not saying I believe that he should be in the running for that seat, and I'm pretty sure that Pramac want to keep him there. But
I'm pretty sure that bike, that seat will be Bastianini's, because even though he's binning it, he has definitely got the largest upside.
Say Martin now wins the second half of the season, actually finishes ahead of him. What do you do?
Bastianini's won 2 races, hasn't he?
Yeah. I put Bastianini in.
Yeah.
Personally, I think he's phenomenal.
I think Bastianini's always going to have the upper hand as well.
He probably just needs a bit of time to mature, because he's kind of burst onto the scene, and this is probably a little bit of growing pain for him as well. Like he needs to go through this. He needs to bin a few bikes just to realize where the limit is. But I think that would be silly not to put him on that bike. He's that bloody good.
I'll tell you one thing that I found interesting this week. I think we have reached the tipping point now of where that new Ducati is actually better than the old one. Other than Jack, if you see it, the new Ducatis. So you had Marini Bagnaia, Zarco, Martin, and Marini, all ahead of the older Ducatis this week, and this has now been 2 races on the spin, where definitely the factory Ducati has been faster than the Gresini one. So I think, and they've put in a new older version of the suspension to give the riders better feeling on the front this week. So I think that we're getting now to a stage where those GP22s look to be the desired bike as well.
Well, this was the whole point of having that bike, because they realized that they had no more development that could be done on the older Ducati, and the plan was that there might be some growing pains if the new Ducati, but the plan was give it a little bit of time, let's work through it, and hopefully by mid-season we'll have something that's definitely got a lot more room to grow than the current bike. So it was interesting. It was an interesting race.
What did you think of Maverick and of Remy and of Binder? These are the 3 that sort of stuck out to me the most. Well, Maverick looked relatively good this weekend.
I think he's growing on that bike. There's definitely been, like, I think ever since I kind of said he looks like he's doing nothing, there's been some improvement with him on the bike, and that's always good to see. I'm super excited about how this Aprilia team is trending. They might be a year away from a championship push, realistically. And I think if there was going to be a championship push, they probably need Maverick, not Aleix, making that push.
Really?
So
that's a massive statement from what we've seen for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but I think that.
What do you think Maverick's highs are higher?
I think his highs are definitely higher, but the issue with Maverick hasn't been his highs because we've seen him win races, we've seen him dominate at different parts in championships in
Yeah.
previous years. His issue isn't his highs, his issue is his lows.
You've been on
And
the LH bandwagon too.
I'm just an Aprilia. I'm just an Aprilia guy, and I love Aprilia. But Alesi's doing the job right now, so you can't really barrack for the guy that's not making the money. But I feel like if that team is going to progress and mount a serious championship charge, it's going to be with someone who's got the more talent. And I don't know. It's probably debatable, but I think that
Well, next
Maverick
year,
has the talent, and there's no excuses next year realistically for
next
him.
year they got 4 bikes,
Hmm.
so there's gonna be more information and more ability to upgrade slash just work out setup.
Mm.
Word on the street is that Fernandez is going there, and Alex Rins. But
We didn't talk about Alex Rins. Poor bloke got absolutely
he
lambasted.
he's in out for as well now for a couple weeks. It seems he's fractured his wrist.
Take the season, I say.
He really didn't. Well, he can't if he hasn't got a contract confirmed yet. He really didn't have many kind words for Nakagami after being taken out by him twice now in 2 races. But see, here's the thing. All these riders, there's so much uncertainty in the market at the moment. So riders really need to put their sort of best foot forward.
Well, races are like a invaluable capital right now, right? Like you
Really?
don't really,
We're running out of
really
races
have the
as well.
exactly.
To
You don't
secure
have
your
the
seat.
luxury to be wasting races, particularly when someone like Rins has literally lost his ride out of nowhere. So very interesting. MotoGP right now, we always say it. It's one of the greatest sports in the world. It's one of the greatest spectacles in the world. It does not cease to deliver. And even now when, Marquez is out and there's uncertainty everywhere.
Do you feel like just saying that, do you feel like the sport now has gotten to a stage where we actually don't need Marquez there for the stories and for the intrigue to be there? If you think about it, you don't really miss him on weekends that he's not there. There's so many
if you follow HRC,
yeah, I mean, other than you. Yeah, other than everyone who follows HRC, which is the most followed brand in the sport.
I think the sport has outgrown Marquez, but I think
in a good way.
In saying that, the sport is weaker without him.
Yeah,
as well. He's arguably the greatest talent that the sport ever saw. So for him not to be there when he could be there,
all the Rossi fans cringing.
Well, yeah, that's probably a debate for another time, but. It's interesting. F1 MotoGP right now is interesting. Let's move. Yeah.
No, just quick. So just on a run through the silly season sort of whispers on the street that seem to be somewhat confirmed. So we have Jack going to factory KTM, and we have Pole going to Tech 3. Now the story is that Oliveira was offered a factory KTM contract, but was told you'll most probably be riding the Tech 3 bike, but it's going to be the exact same bike. And he said, "No, I've made my way to be a factory rider. I'm not going back to a satellite team." Right?
Good on him.
Yeah, good on him. But there's no factory rides left. So he's most probably going to Gresini or maybe the satellite Aprilia team, which seems to be somewhat locked up by Rins and Fernandez. Right?
So it's Gresini, is it?
So it seems like it's going to be. So seems like it's going to be Gresini. Then you have Darren Binder, who has an option left in his contract with the RLN team, but if these two riders are going there, there's no room for him. And the last Tech 3 seat seems to be a battle between Remy and Darren Binder. But the thing
the RNF bike is going to become the Aprilia, right?
It's going to be Aprilia satellite team, yeah.
So there's no room for him just to stay with that team, but move to the Aprilia?
No, because they're going to have most probably Rins or Oliveira and then Raul Fernandez. Because remember,
that's a shame, because I think Binder, to be frank, has been pretty bloody good.
Yeah, but here's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Here's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It seems like Remy might be losing his seat at Tech 3 because who's Darren Brinder's older brother,
But the other
who
thing that
also
we need,
rides for KTM.
the other thing we need to take into consideration is that a seat will open up with
LCR.
Nakagami leaving.
Yeah,
There's
but
even
they're
talk
saying that might be Ayagura coming in from Moto
yeah,
2.
I was going to say that would be logical that that's going to take place. But even Alex Marquez has talked that he won't be keeping his seat next year, which would be interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
So where's Remy end up if he loses his seat?
Maybe on an LCR.
Remy said that he's happy to go to. Not happy. Remy said that if there's no seats available, he's going to be going to World Superbikes. He said that I think 2 weeks ago. I mean, the thing with Remy, he's actually putting together a real good run of performances. I really think it's just going to be about him like we said last week, that all he has to do is not crash, stay out of trouble, and sort of, and not sort of be out of the limelight. But I think now more than ever with these sort of rumors swirling, I think it's now probably time for him to actually start definitely beating Binder in races, but also pushing into that bottom top 10 or high, or always points, trying to get points every race just to really show consistency and professionalism. Because you would think that if he's already at the team, he would be favored by the team if he performs. But there's not enough seats for riders going around at the moment. Like, that's the long and short of it. I mean, put it this way, and then like you have me, who's pretty much confirmed to go to Repsol Honda. But what happens if Marx's surgery isn't successful? Does him not coming back then free up a seat for one of these riders, another coveted seat? Like, it's a very interesting time because there's a lot of changing.
Do you see Ayagura not coming up?
I think he should only come up if he wins the championship, but he looks pretty good at the moment. Like, he's definitely in for shout.
I don't think he's going to be like Vietti has been so consistent.
Vietti's
the
best rider, but Vietti's the best rider, but there's no room for him to come up really. He's like from that whole.
He'll be fine because that stable will move someone on.
Where's he going to go? Bezzecchi's not going to go anywhere.
Well, this is.
Marini's not going anywhere.
I can see Morbidelli going to World Superbike in 2 years, and then one of those younger guys coming up. But I feel like you've chewed the fat of MotoGP hypothesizing for enough this week.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too, but sometimes it does get long in the tooth. So I think we'll set that placemat down for a little while, and let's move on to the race this morning.
Can you explain that analogy, please?
Yeah, I can't really. It was just
just words.
Placemat.
Just because I meant like set it aside. Anyway, put it on anyway. So regardless, boys.
A placemat of barbecue.
Well, you need a placemat for your barbecue so that you don't burn your counter. So there you go. IndyCar this morning, Belle Isle, Grand Prix of Detroit. What a race.
The last
what a race.
13, 15 laps or whatever it was, epic.
The chase, yeah. Fantastic. The whole race, like, I got a message this morning from someone that said,
Thomas,
IndyCar is everything that Formula One is missing out on right now. And truer words have not been spoken, I think. Well, obviously the racing was phenomenal. But I think, and if you haven't watched the race, let's give another free plug to our boys at Foxtel/KO. Oh no, sorry, this is Stan. This is a Stan mini.
We'll cut that. Sorry, Stan.
Yeah, this is a Stan mini. Go watch your 25-minute Stan mini of the race. H, what did you make of it?
Yeah, it's awesome. And Joey said something before the pod started about, it's still putting up good racing even though they're on shitty street circuits like the one at Detroit.
Not shitty. I'm just saying they seem to put on a show on these shitty street circuits, even though F1 can't seem to do it. But like I'm not saying it's a worse track than.
But the cars are smaller. I think that has a massive play. Like they're not as wide, they're not as bulky, they're not as so the drivers are able to make these big moves. They're able
Cars
It's
are
also
smaller.
the layout of the track.
Cars are smaller.
90 degrees.
Tracks are bumpy. Barriers all around. No downforce on the cars. Push to pass, active push to pass, as opposed to
DRS.
passive push to
DRS.
pass. All of those things there have brought about phenomenal racing, and I think
And a really stacked grid of really talented drivers.
100%. The last 5 years of IndyCar, and it's probably the beauty of F1 drivers getting long in the tooth without people like Vettel and Alonso, Hamilton, etc. Not leaving. You wouldn't see these really young drivers or these great drivers like O'Ward and even people like Christian Lundgaard, who hasn't really found his feet yet. Callum Rosenquist, who's getting a little bit older now as well. But
Ericsson.
all of those drivers, if there was room for them in Formula One, never really would have made the transition across.
You know what else I love?
What do you love?
How many cars there are.
Yeah.
It's three. Every team's three deep. Like it just creates a better spectacle, I think.
It's phenomenal racing. Like, I mean, obviously you watch Formula One, and the draw card to Formula One is it's like the illustriousness of it, like the excess of it, the stars that go to the races, the tracks that they race on, the Rolex, signage all over the place. Like it's the allure of Formula One. But
Rolex? You mean Aramco?
And Rolex is everywhere too.
I'm joking.
Can I say, but like, think about the tracks we've been to this year in Formula One. Are any of the 7 tracks that we've been to part of your top 4 or 5 tracks on the calendar? Maybe Imola.
But what track that IndyCar has been to this year has been on that list as well?
On the Indy calendar.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't say
we've
that.
Been to 2 of the best tracks now, Long Beach and Detroit.
Fucking Long Beach, come on, man! You know Long Beach is a shit track. Come on, man.
But
get off it.
But you're thinking Monaco. We know we discussed that last week. Miami was shit. Jeddah shit. Bahrain I don't rate. Australia, it was better than usual, but still not the best.
But do you know the issue, boys? Then like when you actually watch the races and you see the juxtaposition between the two categories, right? I think the real issues that Formula One has is that there isn't any of the decisions that they've made are extreme enough. So if you were to look at IndyCar, the tires are degrading twice rapidly. As much as in Formula One. So it pushes teams to have to make a 2-stop strategy. And when you've got two tires to pick from, and there's a almost enforced 2-stop strategy because of the degradation of the tires, you get really good racing. I mean, we saw it at Barcelona when it was so hot that the tires were delaminating. But how many races do we have that don't allow for that kind of intrigue to take place?
Well, you look at the race today where you had 2 different strategies, not many safety cars really to get involved.
There was no safety cars.
Yeah, and then you have a race.
A 1 second difference between the 2 strategies.
Yeah, I mean that's the stuff that dreams are made of.
Can I say, in regard to the safety car thing, there was one thing that I noticed that I thought was common sense prevailed. I can't remember who went off, and they were able to take a shortcut to the pits.
Yeah, Graham Rahal.
Yeah, he was able to take that would not happen in Formula One.
But also you got to remember that the street of Detroit would definitely help out with that situation as well.
Yeah, I get that, but like just little things like that where common sense does prevail in IndyCar, whereas in Formula One it becomes a whole big palaver, and you got to bring out the safety car or the virtual safety car, and it's just I think that kind of thing adds to the spectacle.
The other thing with IndyCar is that all the body kits are the same. The engines are pretty much built to be identical, even though they're not. But there's only 2 engines, so it really is a matter of who's the best driver or the best team on the day. Like pretty much everyone's going to race in sort of the same gear very much like what supercars will be next year, I suppose.
You know, that point that you just made just got me thinking, right? Because obviously Formula One sells itself on the fact that it's not that it's bespoke, right? That it's not a cookie cutter championship. Now,
spec series.
Yeah, a spec series. But the recent, and we've spoken about this on the pod before, so I don't want to, start monologuing about it again. But when you do see the success that spec series are having, I don't think Formula One needs to go fully spec, but I think it does need to take some findings and knowledge from these series. So, for example, build your own engine, but this is the output that you're building it towards. Build your own chassis and your own aero design, but this is the downforce that it needs to generate. I'm sure that there are engineers within the Formula One field that would be able to calculate downforce that's being generated, max and minimum downforce that's generated on front and rear wings. So that way you've got a field to play within. Okay. You can come up with the design, but this is what you are working towards. You're working towards a number. You're not working towards a max that you can generate. You're working towards the max that the rule set stipulates. And that would also bring down cuts.
It would be simpler than that, because all they'd have to do, like, I don't think you want it to be that extreme, because it's still Formula One. It still has to have that flavor of, each team being unique.
But that's why they can design whatever they want. They just need to reach the metrics that are imposed.
You could put a better parameters, like your car has to have, like, all the cars run a certain rake, and then you have sort of air winglets that have to be at a certain angle, and just sort of tighten up the parameters of what the teams. But having said that, then you miss sort of like that really interesting part of the year when you, like, at the start of the year, we had a Red Bull, a Ferrari, and a McLaren with all totally different side pod geometry and just car geometry. Like, I think Formula One has to be a little bit different in that respect. Like, I don't want it to go too bespoke.
I don't think it needs
too cookie cutter.
I don't think it needs to be that extreme. I think they just need to reduce the size of the bloody cars so they can overtake.
Do you reckon an active overtake system would benefit it as well? Better as opposed to DRS?
I mean, better than DRS.
So when you say active, is that like a button they press?
Yeah,
push to pass.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. They used to have KERS. They used to have KERS.
Yeah, I used to love KERS when we used to play F1.
So I think that's probably, because the other thing is it's not aero dependent. It's dependent on, and they've got hybrid engines that would allow them to have a boost module.
I would like to see them get rid of the DRS in favor of a KERS, because whenever is there KERS in like a KERS in Super Formula?
No, there's KERS in Formula.
There was in DTM.
There's KERS in touring cars now, in British touring cars. But regardless, the closest thing to F1 is IndyCar. It works. Sorry, there's KERS in Super GT. It works very well there. There's KERS in IndyCar. It works very well there, and it facilitates a lot of overtaking. We saw last week in Barcelona that even without KERS, how long did it take Max Verstappen to get past George Russell? Oh no, that was an inverse. Sorry, that was an inverse.
Yeah.
But then also what it does generate as well isn't just strategy for the overtaking car, but strategy for the defending car when they choose to deploy as well.
Yeah, but I suppose they've got their battery charge that they use similarly. I know it's not the same, but
well, that's almost encoded in by the engineers. It's not like they're physically.
But with the KERS, what you then get is that you sort of get a uniform, power output and time to use it throughout the whole race. So then it becomes sort of a strategic thing as well, because what we want to see drivers with the power to sort of make meaningful decisions in a race, other than just the strategist going, okay, let's conserve these tires. So giving them some form of, what do you call it? Active.
I've just made it up. I just coined the term now. I might put a trademark on it.
What is it? Tell us what it is.
It's called an active overtake. Overtake system.
Okay, so I like that. That sounds good. So your active overtake system gives the drivers a little bit of, a way that they can either use it in attacking or also use it in defending. Like that's the other.
The other thing
really
is you don't have to wait to get within a second.
To
activate it. The other thing is, like, you could very easily do the same thing with DRS. Is if rather than having a system where you had to only open it within a second,
You have a certain amount of times.
You had just a certain amount of time a race where you could have the flap open.
Yeah,
and that would essentially do the same thing.
I think having the ability to use it wherever you want on the track too will add in extra jeopardy. Because at the moment, you think of a place like Imola, the only overtakes we're really getting is that massive straight.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got 2 straights on a track or anywhere that the driver's able to deploy it, you're going to get overtakes all over the place instead of the one.
Can you imagine someone coming out of Parabolica and activating some form of push to pass or curves, and how much how much that would sort of help them when they got to the end of that straight?
100%. But even just to catch up, like you would be able to let me just use a little bit coming off the end of a long straight just to get half a second here or half a second there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is different cars have different characteristics. So how those teams, all those individual teams choose to develop a strategy when deploying that particular system would make it a lot more engaging, as opposed to, he's 1.2 seconds away, almost like you can bite your fingernails. He's nearly there, but he's not. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a lot more like that in and of itself. I think would dramatically radicalize the racing, and also the ability to close up on a car and try to make a move happen straight away.
I think we've solved Formula One, boys.
That might be part of it. I think the other thing is we've got to get high deg tires that are not going to tires that will last 20 laps max.
Remember the super softs they used to have, the purple ones?
Ultra soft or hyper soft.
Hyper soft, bring them back.
Yeah.
Dude, I think
they should only run. They should only run hyper soft, super softs.
Yeah. I don't know why Formula One don't try and get a tire that that they have to do at least 3 pit stops a race. I don't know why this is not.
I think the issue is because Pirelli want to show that their tire is robust as well.
Yeah, but they're shit on the road anyway.
Yeah, but if you look at like MotoGP, not to go back to MotoGP, the MotoGP tires are they're good, they're a great tire.
They're designed to degrade.
But they're designed to be, somewhat trash. Like you would never build a road tire that is that erodes that much, I suppose, if you're pushing it that hard.
You know what's frustrated me this year more than anything? The
McLaren.
fact that, that too. Q2, you used to have to start the race on the tyres that you set your fastest lap in Q2 if you made it through to the top 10. Yeah. They've gotten rid of that. So all that strategy that if you were 11th or 12th or whatever, that's out the window now. Everyone's starting on softs, or everyone's starting on mediums.
That's a good point, I've never really even thought of that this year.
Boring start to the race.
I've got another hypothesis, but another theory.
About Indy?
About what?
About IndyCar?
No, it's for Formula One, but it's kind of taken from IndyCar. But my theory is this. We limit even further the amount of tyres you can run. So you can only run, 5 or 6 sets over a weekend.
But then you can't have your super degrading tyres.
No, you can have the same tyres that they have now, but then also...
You mean quantities or...?
Yeah, so let's say you have 5 sets for a whole race meet.
But 2 compounds.
2 compounds. Yeah. But then also... to prevent teams from just sitting in the pits all of practice, they have a mandated amount of track running that they need to do if the car doesn't crash, essentially. So if you've got an hour of practice, you're mandated to at least do 40 minutes of running.
No, I don't like that because they do that in supercars and I fucking hate it.
But then the tires do degrade. And then you get
to a stage where you get these results that aren't deserved because someone I suppose F1's only one race. That's the difference.
That's right. It's only one race.
Fair enough.
Everyone loves David Bradbury.
I don't
We've got 9. I think it's 9 tire sets you have for a race meet in Formula One.
You have 4 qualifying. You have 4 practice sessions. You have an hour of qualifying if you're a good team, and then you got a 2-hour race.
Yeah, but Joe, let's do qualifying. Literally, 1 set of hards for all of the whole qualifying.
Ooh.
That's actually a good idea.
That's a mad idea.
Because everyone is degrading at the same level, and if you're a ballsy guy, you go do. This is also what you do. You make qualifying shorter, so it's rather than being a 50. Listen, please.
Nah,
rather than going,
it can't be shorter.
Listen, rather than going 15 minutes, you drop it to 10 minutes, so that at max you're going to do 2 runs. You're going to do 2 runs. If you've got the balls to do it, you do 1 run, and then you can save tyre for the next 2 sessions if you need to.
Yeah, but then when Yuki hits the wall and gets back to the pits, everyone's qualifying stuffed.
But then the fact that it's on one tire means that it's going to be the same for everyone, but it's going to throw up a whole can of jeopardy. That's phenomenal. Like,
I'll tell you what though, I do like the idea of quick qualifying.
I like the quality system.
It doesn't have to be. I like the system. I don't want them to make it shorter. I just want them to make each session a little bit shorter, just so that there's more
making
pressure.
It shorter. I hate to break it to you.
But just like take 2 minutes off it, so they don't have the same time to sit in the pit lane for as long.
Oh, yeah, like in between.
Q3 shits me when they're all sitting in the pit lane from 10 minutes to 5 minutes.
That's right. So rather than being a 10-minute session, let's go 7 minutes or 8 minutes, just so that it makes it a little bit tighter for them. Anyway, those are my ideas.
It's not a bad idea.
Less tires, and they have to run them more often.
I like that hard tire thing. I got to say, I like that idea.
I like the idea of minimizing the compounds.
You've cracked the F1 case, bro.
Let's write to Ross Brawn.
No, write to Michael Massey. So this is your comeback thesis, mate.
Massey's going to say F Formula One. They did me wrong.
It's called a motor race.
Imagine poor Michael Massey watching Monaco last week, thinking they got rid of me for these cowards.
To throw a red flag when Yuki touched a wall. Anyway, I did want to bring up the fact that we have an Aussie who just won a race. He came from 16th on the grid.
Yeah.
In INDYCAR.
Yeah.
And all I'm reading is every other motorsport category in the world bar his win from our local news. What do we think?
Well, the local news this is the thing about INDYCAR, right? INDYCAR is the hidden gem there are many hidden gems. It is a hidden gem of motorsport because not enough people know about it. And when people do find out about it, they're like, this is awesome. And I think you're testament to that, Harry. Like, you're testament to the whole, bloody hell, this is like one of the most awesome categories I've seen, but I had no idea of it. And that's probably something that...
I thought it was poor man's Formula One back in the day, that's why.
It still is poor man's Formula One.
But the fact I looked down at it for that reason, instead of giving it a chance.
You are an elitist. You did the same thing with supercars.
I used to watch supercars. And then,
this was years ago. And then you stopped. And then you stopped.
I didn't want to watch the Bogans, so I stopped.
But there's definitely something to be said for that. How do you fix it though? You bring a race back to Australia.
Mate, Supercars just announced the Gold Coast 500's back on. Put it on the same bloody weekend or one weekend apart.
The problem is they need to make it, like, for them to do it, it needs to be financially viable for INDYCAR. Now, INDYCAR obviously doesn't have the money of some of the other sports in America. So for it to be viable for them, it's going to have to be subsidized somewhat by supercars. And I don't think supercars would be willing to do that.
You would need
Imagine the crowd.
You need another Aussie driver.
But I would beg to differ. I don't think there would be as many as you think Aussies who would care as much about it.
It used to be back in the day.
Yeah, but like you need to put on a big. You need to have an Aussie racer of the sort of ilk and pedigree of Scott McLaughlin, so they can be a force straight away. Not talk shit about supercars, as well, because that will rub people up the wrong way, and then use that as a marketing tool. But it's like what you're saying about Will Power is that there would be more Americans who know who Will Power is than Australians. Like Will Power has, I think, only come back and raced in Australia once, which is no fault of his own. Like, he's a professional INDYCAR, racer. He's earning good coin and is one of the most successful INDYCAR racers of the INDYCAR history, I think, nearly by now. So like, that's not his problem, but marketing an Aussie who not many people know about, is not really sort of where you want to, like, your strongest footing.
Do you know what would be a power move?
Yeah.
For Adelaide.
That would be
INDYCAR race.
That would
Adelaide.
That would be the track.
That's a better track than, like, I love Gold Coast, but that's
here's
a better
the other
track
thing as well. Like, here's what people don't know: when IndyCars were coming to the Gold Coast, and when Will Power was racing in it, originally the team he was racing for was owned by Aussies and funded by, I think, Penfolds Winery.
It wasn't Penfolds.
One of the big wineries.
What's the one with the Is it yellow? Was it yellow tonight?
I don't know. But like, see, like that's sort of where the whole connection comes from. So like that, there's none of that really now.
Come on, Zach Brown, WAU, sort that out. Get him over here.
Told me he's not invested enough in it.
What, in
IndyCar?
No, like getting them down here, I don't think. Oh, maybe.
The ironic part is that Andretti and McLaren are against each other in IndyCar, even though they own shares in the same supercar team.
It was Aussie Vineyards. Aussie Vineyards was sponsoring them.
Yeah.
Never even heard of them.
Yeah.
I think they went bust. But anyway, yeah. So like that is the problem when you say I didn't hear anything about Will Power. He's at the end of his career, not at the beginning of his career. And if you haven't heard of him by now, like that's sort of testament to, I think, the path he's taken and also the dip that IndyCar went through before its sort of new resurgence. Like what, for 10 years, not even like 7 years ago, it definitely wasn't this. Yeah, there was like 4 teams keeping it together with 4 cars each, and then a few like stragglers and stuff. But like now it's a totally different beast.
But you know what? Like, do you know, here's something fascinating, and it's so true. IndyCar 10 years ago was a formula that had high downforce cars that weren't able to follow each other very well, tires that didn't degrade, cars that looked pretty ordinary, and
you're right.
And there wasn't enough of a focus on the spectacle. There was just a history that they were trying to maintain, and then they had to be humble enough to say this isn't working. They developed a formula that works. They were very much assisted, I think, by Fernando Alonso going and doing the Indy 500.
100%.
6 or 7 years ago, because as soon as that happened, we saw drivers start moving from Europe. Like it was Alonso, and then Alexander Rossi moved from Formula One to IndyCar. He won the Indy 500. He won the Indy 500.
Montoya going from NASCAR to IndyCar was a big thing as well.
But then I'm trying to think who was the first big name
in IndyCar.
To IndyCar, yeah.
Ericsson? In our time.
Yeah, but Ericsson isn't a big name.
No,
I think it could have been.
For us, it was just Rossi. No one else went before that.
F2 drivers that made the move over? Who were they? What's his name? He's still racing now.
Max Chilton.
No, he's not a big name. Regardless, but you've got people like Christian Lundgaard. You've got people like Pato O'Ward. These drivers were people that were trying to make it in Formula One, and then they made the decision to move to IndyCar. You see Callum Ilott do the same thing as well. It's become a viable option, and now that you've got, I mean, probably the reason why IndyCar did fall off the map was because they didn't have enough good drivers, and they were filibustering the bottom of their field with just.
They had a very old field like 5 years ago,
and ordinary drivers, and then you've all of a sudden got this injection of youth. Yeah. And you're seeing a lot of teams now having to follow suit just to stay relevant, which is phenomenal to see.
But
except Penske. Actually, no, they have.
Well, they went Newgarden. Remember when Newgarden was a big deal when they signed him.
Yeah.
Your point of they made the change 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. Formula One's not going to do that because currently, if you look at it objectively, they're getting the biggest crowds they've ever gotten. They're getting the highest ratings. We understand that the spectacle is not as good as what it should be because we've been watching it for years, but to the newcomer...
100%. Yeah, I get that.
And that's why they're not going to... There's going to be... They think... And you know what? The new cars have done their job. They're able to follow, but it still hasn't solved, the main issues.
I think as well, when you think about it, Formula One is always better in hindsight. Like whenever you're in a moment, you think, oh, like this is not what it's cracked up to be. Then you sort of think of it 5 years later and you think that was actually pretty good. Like we think, oh, the Schumacher era was the best and the guy was winning 80% of the races for like 6 years. And we forget that. And then when Alonso was winning, same thing. And then when Vettel was winning, same thing, and then Hamilton.
They were never as dominant as Hamilton.
Oh, Schumacher had a few pretty dominant years, like crazy dominant years. But like like in hindsight, like this, it's always sort of better to look back on it. I mean, the other thing is that you're saying about newcomers that like newcomers haven't had a chance to get bored yet.
That's what I was going to say. That the
Like
issue that Harry
that's the interesting that's coming.
that's where I was going to lead to, because H, you made a good point, but the issue is you've brought all these newcomers into the sport, and they have seen, or they have been introduced to Formula One through the fantasy that is
Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive. And the problem is, how long are they going to watch the races for until they realize it's not Drive to Survive, and it's not nearly Drive to Survive? So
yeah, but maybe they only want to watch Drive to Survive.
Well, if that's the case,
I've heard
if
so many
that's the
people who
case,
just wait for Drive to Survive.
Yeah, if that's the case, then that's
It's like a
fine as
season
well.
of it's like a season of Stranger Things. Like, oh, every year get a new season, watch it for like a week, and then like forget about it for the next year. Watch a new season, forget it for that's my cousin. My cousin binged My cousin binged 4 seasons of Drive to Survive back to back.
Whoa.
I would not be able to do that if you paid me money. That would be like so much sort of like just neat.
A lot of
like
Fox smash my doors.
Obviously for the new fans, like that's the one thing I don't like shitting on it for, because it's bringing in massive fans, and the testament is 2 new races in America next year. But you know, like maybe that's all they need.
What happens if you could actually watch, like, proof is in the pudding that race formulas can be put together that are more engaging than Formula One. Fact.
That's always been the case, I think.
So why not push for that?
Dude, there's a reason why in James Hunt's time, Hesketh was bringing caviar and the party to F1 because they were still the same thing. The best racers winning every race, you know. So you bring the party to the track, like that's always been part of it, you know, with the way that it is. I mean, I think like all F1 want is for all their fans to watch Drive to Survive, and then whenever the race comes to their country / city, whatever, just make as much bank from each of those races. Like that is literally
that's
the
also
best.
the luxury of Formula One. Like we're talking about all these domestic series or intercontinental series. Formula One is lucky in that you go to each country once a year, and
it's pretty massive when you think about it.
You went to the Formula One. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was the greatest race, but the whole aura of the weekend is memorable, and you'll go back because of it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's the other thing, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's probably not conducive.
It's got the sickest merch.
It's probably not conducive to like a purist person who like loves racing for racing. But
you know as well, the problem is with you, Anth, you watch too much. If you only watched F1, you wouldn't think like have these thoughts because you'd be like, oh, this is F1, but because you watch F1, supercars, IndyCar, any GT race, then endurance racing, couple motorbikes in there. You know, we're addicts. So we just watch too much stuff and then we go, oh, there's only been...
We're overly critical. We might be the issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Overcritical mind might be the issue.
It sounds like we're shitting all over Formula One, but
we're not.
It's still my favorite. It's still the number one in my book.
The backbone of this podcast is the love for Formula One.
Formula One.
But with love does come hard conversations at times, and that can't
Listen to
be...
this guy.
He's so philosophical.
That can't be overlooked. You know,
it's like the Dr. Phil of F1 commentary.
Dr. Phil?
Yeah, just taking it into the serious space.
Nah.
Did you know? All right. Do you want to just dabble on the few things I want on the peripherals this weekend? And
I think we've got to dabble on WEC.
The big news. Big news coming.
This is the other issue that Formula One's going to have if they're not careful.
Yeah, but we thought that a couple of years ago as well, and nothing happened.
Endurance.
But no, it's just the fact that the manufacturer support that is getting established in World Endurance Championship or in prototype racing in general, it's looking good. I mean, Porsche is looking good. We know that Ferrari's coming in. We know that we found out a couple of weeks ago that Lamborghini's coming into endurance racing in Le Mans. BMW released some of the coolest renders that I've ever seen for this new prototype car as well. And if you want cars that are fast, that are sustainably considerate, that are brand relevant, WEC have done a good job with this particular structure.
The races are too long. You're not going to hold the audience for long enough. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
the Formula One race goes for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I get that. But
I don't
But
think
if
WEC races are meant to be
it's not
watched
trying. Yeah.
in one sitting. But I mean, I think WEC is definitely, and for all those who don't know, WEC stands for World Endurance Championship that we didn't specify. I think for WEC, like you need to have like a gateway drug into motorsport, and then you sort of fall in love with it after that. It's not something you sort of come into.
F1's a great gateway drug. It's the party drug.
Yeah, you know.
That's the name of the app.
But it's not the hard stuff when it comes to
Nah,
real motorsport, is it?
No, it is. But like,
It's not.
when
It's
you
the
see
party drug.
when you see a train of cars coming down the Mulsanne Straight, and then you see sort of a WEC prototype pop out, take over 4 cars, pop back in, and then you see it's LMP2 then take over a couple GT cars. Like it's like nothing you'll ever see.
That's the deep state of motorsport, eh?
I mean, it's when the addiction has taken a proper hold, and you got problems.
Yeah.
Is SVG Le Mans?
Yeah,
he's
so
racing. He's racing Ferrari
this
this
year.
weekend.
Yeah.
He was the fastest. He was the fastest rookie, I think they were saying today.
I'm not surprised.
Do you reckon he's going to hang around long then?
I don't think so. I think he just
V8s
loves
too
racing
much,
anything. I think he said that he just loves V8s too much. But like we've seen him race in the LMP2 before in Asian Le Mans. Like I think he just likes trying a bit of everything. But I mean, I just love seeing our good talent actually put on show, like for the world to see.
SVG's biggest issue is that he probably is
A bit too old.
a little bit too old for like.
Not for WEC though.
No, definitely not
Not
for
for
WEC,
endurance racing.
But I think he's probably got the talent that exceeds an endurance driver in that he's got more than just consistency. He's got outright pace. And I would have loved, like, we never will know, but McLaughlin's gone to IndyCar. It's been pretty good. And him and SVG were both pretty comparable in supercars. Probably McLaughlin had a little bit of an edge, but he also had, I would say, maybe the slightly stronger car at the time as well. So like he's probably 5 years too late to go join IndyCar even, and we'll just never know. But the fact that he's going to Le Mans, and he's racing in there, I think it's an awesome story. It's a really good, and I hope it's something that other Australians, run with as well. Obviously we saw. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Matthew Payne, who's the junior driver for Grove, he raced last week in the European Le Mans for JWM in Ferrari. He's looking to race in Le Mans as well. So hopefully,
Do you reckon he'll race at Spa with the Grove team?
No.
They'll probably take 4 drivers, and they've got Barker, the 2 Grove fellas.
I think the problem with, not the problem, but I think with the establishment that Grove have with Herbert, they'll probably put another Herbert driver in.
Maybe.
Like that's beside the point. But if you haven't seen the renders coming through right now for
from BMW Motorsport.
Yeah, from BMW Motorsport.
Dude, that's a wild car. That looks like that's everything I wanted and more. Really, look, I wasn't expecting it.
But even like that car looks
BMW in the Bahamas.
I was waiting for Cadillac this week, and then BMW said we're going to drop our car this week as well. So I was it's not going to drop before Cadillac. The Cadillac is coming out in 2 days.
Yeah.
So like, man, I'm in the WEC deep state at the moment.
But
I'm just,
you know what, boys?
I'm just waiting hard. And Le Mans is next week.
But boys, before I lose my train of thought on this, WEC was very much previously of the same thought process as Formula One, in that it was innovative, it was design driven, it was there for the manufacturers to have a testing ground for their ideas, etc. And they realized that prices were going through the roof. It was difficult for teams to stay in the sport and be sustainable in it. So they said, okay, we're going to set the parameters. If you want to race, go and get this particular chassis, use that as a base. These are the type of engines you run. We don't care how you construct them, but this is the output that we're looking for. So they put up, these are the tires you're running. This is the parameters that you can have for your aero, all of those things. Now, they didn't say this is what the cars need to look like. And you've got a number of different cars already. Toyota, Peugeot, Glickenhaus. Like, they are all very different cars, but they're all being designed to a very specific set of parameters. And I think going back to the claim that I made earlier about Formula One is that, yes, you can have team identity and engineering uniqueness, for use of a better word, because that's not a proper word. But I think the constraints that the formula sets is going to determine its success. And I think this is obviously very early days for the WEC, but a lot of signs are looking up.
I think what you're saying is so apparent because 5 years ago, when you had Porsche, Audi, and Toyota, sort of in that prototype category in WEC, they were bordering on sort of F1-ish kind of budgets, like mid-table F1 budgets. And like it was probably the best sort of prototype racing you could ever wish for, even though there was only 6 cars.
Yeah, but then even the spectacle was so good.
Yeah, but I'm saying like
and then it was very easy for the teams to pull out.
Yeah, but what I'm saying was the spectacle was so good, but like the budgets weren't comparable to that spectacle / what marketing sort of power you can get out of it as well.
100%.
So what they've done is they've said, okay, we know what we are, and we're going to sort of help you stay in that bracket of like what we are, so that you can actually sort of run a sustainable, program without dumping. I think it was ended up like $250 million on R&D every year.
If I could make one more comparison,
you may.
WEC at the time was very much train of thought of Formula One, which was development, money.
Batteries.
And IMSA at the time, which is obviously the American sports car counterpart, is very much considerate of making sure that they can get as many teams into the sport as possible, and to have a system that allows them to run cars affordably so that they have a good spectacle. And what WEC did was acknowledge, hey, you've got something that's working very well for you there. The DPI platform that was developed in America, they kind of said, we can take some of that and bring that to our racing. And they met in the middle. Now, I'm not saying that Formula One and IndyCar need to become the same entity, but at the same time, be humble enough to acknowledge this is something that's working really well on the other side of the ditch. Are there certain strands or thought processes that we can take and then try to implement in our own championship, because it does improve racing.
I just thought of something that is so dumb.
Well, don't just tell us you thought about it. Actually,
this BMW isn't even racing in WEC yet. It's still only IMSA bound.
But
but look it up, guys.
But
no, look it up. It is the. You know what?
But it
can
can race in WEC.
The photo for this pod.
It can race in WEC.
Wild. They can, yeah. Can we make this the cover picture for this pod because it looks wild?
Let's call this pod, what can F1 learn from everybody else?
Or the cherry pickers.
Or just call it placemat.
Placemat.
You're speaking with a lot of wisdom, Tanya, I've got to say.
Who?
When you don't talk about Jack Miller or Danny Ricciardo, I feel like that's when you shine the most. That's when you make so much sense.
I saw a stat, and I know we've spoken about Lewis being behind George, but he's the same amount of points behind George that Danny Rick's behind Lando. So,
hey, what have I been saying? But they both need to go.
No, they don't. Shut up.
It's their swan songs. It's their swan songs. Susan Ball is already on the podium. She's warming up the vocals.
Baku this week.
Yep.
I'm pumped.
I don't know what to expect, but I'm hoping for a much better race not much better, because it's usually a pretty good race, but an even better race than what we've seen previously.
You know what excites me the most?
What?
It's a 9 p.m. start on Sunday night.
Yeah, sounds good. You know what I love about Baku though? Like the track is phenomenal.
The stupid little skinny part.
The castle.
Nah. I'm not.
You would love that, because
I don't mind the castle, but
you love stupid stuff.
I wouldn't say it's like conducive to racing. But what I do love about Baku is that the whole aura of racing through that old part of the city and then moving back into the new part. I think it's a great track. I really do.
It.
I'm hoping that at the very least, and I said this last week, there is some serious streamlining down the front straight just to get passes happening. Because if we have another procession, like Baku is a track that can be processional due to its 90-degree nature. And if there isn't overtaking on that main straight, then we could be in for a long one. Lucky it's a 9 o'clock race, because if we were starting at 12...
next week we have Baku.
And Le Mans.
We've got Sachsenring. And we've got Le Mans, I think. Actually, no, Sachsenring's on the 17th, I think.
We're not triple headering MotoGP next week. Like this.
Do they have four races in 5 weeks? But no, they've already raced 2 back-to-back, so there's a break and then Sachsenring. Yeah.
They've got another back-to-back after that.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. This is what I think. I'll give you a bit of a prediction for Baku. I think...
Max.
Nope. I think Ferrari still. Little less draggy. But this is my hot pick for the race. I think McLaren, 3rd fastest team on the weekend. And I think they're only half a second behind Ferrari.
Ooh.
Wow.
Because that car doesn't have drag.
That sounds like something you pulled out of your ass, eh?
Sector 2 is tight 90-degree corners.
Throw it, but that's not going to be Ferrari's strength. That will be where Red Bull are the strongest team.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have a feeling the Merc will be quite quick.
Mate, we've got a good week coming up. We've got the rest of the Isle of Man TT. We've got Baku.
Mate, you want to talk about hidden gems?
We've got Le Mans. No, we're not ready to get that deep.
I was going to say, I don't even know what that is, boys.
That gem is still in like the bloody sifting bowl where you're trying to find the gold.
What are your analogies? Let's just end it.
Did you teach food tech today, mate? Is that what it is?
No, I didn't teach any food tech today. You know what? I just had an awesome weekend of racing. Like, I've still got one race to catch up on. I've still got to finish the Paul Ricard 1,000-kilometer race.
I haven't dabbled in that yet.
So much racing this week. Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because when you've got a 50-car field, it's awesome. All right, I think we've shot it for long enough tonight, boys. Some good talking points. Always good to catch up with you, lads. Formula One's back next week, and after all the negative things we've said about it tonight, I'm sure it's gonna put together an awesome spectacle. And then H, it's gonna be your first Le Mans 24-hour next week, mate. So.
Oh, mate, I watched Ford versus Ferrari. That's pretty close, isn't it?
You've got Stan Sport, don't you?
I do, mate. I do.
Yeah, so it's going to be on Stan Sport, ready for you, mate.
Yeah.
Give it a go. I think it's not going to.
I wonder how big that mini will be.
The most unconvincing.
This guy is like the elitist, mate. He's
like the reluctant sort of fan.
No,
like you have to lead him to the water, and then when he finds it, he's like, "Fucking oath."
You need to drown him. You need to make him drink it. You need to make him drink it against his will. Then he loves it.
I don't think I could pay attention for that long, boys.
You don't have to. Half an hour, go do something else. Dude, come back half an hour.
We don't even know who's going to win. We don't even care about the results until at least 45 minutes before the end of the race.
I picture you two just sitting there for 24 hours watching it straight.
Dude, if I could,
I've done it before. We've done it back in 2017. I think it was the Nürburgring 24 hours. And I think I got 16 out of the 24 hours in.
I think we used to have a thing.
Nordschleife or the new one?
Nordschleife. We used to watch as many hours as we could as like a flex on each other. So we got like, how many hours did you watch? Oh, 16. How many hours did you watch? I watched 15, but you know, I had to watch it on my phone for the other like 4 hours. I was at the shops with my wife, kind of thing. Like, so it's an addiction.
I've done that before.
Addiction.
But then you start living with someone else. Doesn't. Oh,
you got time. You got time, H. You're at the beginning of this wonderful journey. You're a project for us now. We finally found a disciple.
I wish I was as green as you, to be honest with you, Harry. Like, I wish I had the ignorance that you have for some of, like, to discover things. Yeah, I do. Like, it's like something you never get back.
That's why we're into Supercross now, because we just have to keep finding stuff.
Yeah, but then that's another hidden gem. That's like another nugget of awesomeness. Anyway, I think
you two will watch turtles go at it, so you watch anything that's racing.
I wouldn't go that far. There's got to be some kind of. Although I'm not going to lie, give me a cider on like a spring carnival on a spring carnival afternoon, mate, and I'll
we watch like European go-karts, for crying out loud. If it's on YouTube, come on, watch anything.
Yeah, it's true. If it's competitive, we'll go for it. Anyway, boys, that was a good chat. That was a good chat.
It was.
I'm
just delving into the,
It's good when there's no pressure to like
talk about
review.
something.
There's no pressure to review something, so you can kind of just let
shit.
Exactly. You can just meander with kind of your thought patterns. Anyway.
Yeah, it'd be fun when we see we've got 0 views for this episode. It's just
we had fun, boys.
The problem is, people only want to hear about Formula One, and we were absolutely berating it tonight.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, boys.
Fellas, till next time.
Night. And just before we go, let me just give a quick plug to the pod. Again, guys, please keep sharing the word, sending your likes, sending your subscribes,
and leave a review.
And please leave a review just to let us know, number one, if you're actually liking what we're talking about, and if there are things that you think we can improve upon. Don't feel shy to put a comment. Like, we're all big boys. We can take a bit of criticism. If you want to get one of our ugly mugs off the podcast and fill it with someone else, then be my guest. And the other thing that we actually wanted to say as well, if you are interested in joining the pod for a one-off and just want to talk about whatever topics it is that are going on in the world of racing that week, please send us a message, and we'll be more than happy to try to tee something up, just to get a bit of the fan voice in on the Racing Line pod, because we're all about the fan voice here on the Racing Line podcast. So,
that's
boys,
why we do it.
But now we are.
Yeah, that's it. So, boys, have a great night. Thanks for your time. You're both legends.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, boys.
Keep loving the racing, boys.
Dude, there's nothing else, unfortunately.